I think we might get ready to get started this morning. First of all, let's start with the introductions. So this is Shane Preston, Chief Operating Officer at Data Transformed. And joining me on the line this morning is Dan Cox, our Chief Technical Officer, and Dan will be the person who will be doing much of the presentation for you today. In I guess the wonder of modern communication, Dan and I are both in geographically different locations, so it's great to be able to organise the webinar for you today and to focus on budgeting, forecasting and reporting. So if we look at the agenda for this morning, what we'll find is that we'll just do a little bit of an overview of Data Transformed as an organisation. Many of the people on the line haven't had a lot to do with Data Transformed in the past, so just a couple of minutes to set the scene there for you, and then we'll get into budgeting, forecasting and reporting using the MaxiPlan technology, and then we'll open the line at the end for a Q&A. Everyone at this stage is muted just to cut down the background noise. If you do want to raise a question as we go through, please feel free to write that into the chat box and we can respond to it either as we're going or at the end, but we will have a specific Q&A session at the end as well. Okay, so a little bit about Data Transformed as an organisation. Our focus really is around corporate performance management. So what does that mean? Really, what that means is, as an organisation, what we help to do is to facilitate for our clients and our customers to be able to manage their business based on the metrics and the key performance indicators that are important to those organisations. Part of that, and part of which we will cover over today, is some of the technologies that provide the ability to link the different aspects of performance management and create the visibility. And part of it, of course, is process and part of it is attitudinal. So really, when we're talking about corporate performance management, we're talking about the questions that drive an organisation's performance. Starting off with, how are we doing, i.e. reporting on current performance, reporting on performance versus budget, for example, and performance versus plan, which then presented in a highly visual and often in a dashboard type of environment, or at least in a visual environment, starts generating the questions about why is our performance as an organisation as it is, leading then to the bit more predictive about what should we be doing about the performance that we're seeing, what should we be doing to achieve our goals and objectives. So in a nutshell, that's our approach to corporate performance management. And today, some of the technologies that we recommend or utilise as part of that, we'll be covering off on one of those. So a little more about Data Transformed. How do we do that? Well, what's important? So basically, as an organisation, as you can see from the graphic there, every organisation has information sitting in different types of sources. It could be in CRM systems, it could be in your general ledger or your ERP system, could be depending on the business point of sale or other operational systems, could be Excel spreadsheets, could be lots of different sources. Our methodology philosophy really is to get that information into a central repository or a single source of truth in the business. And from there, you can then have a common reporting layer so that everyone in the business is viewing and working with the same information. Also, as part of the graphic, if anyone can't see the screen, please feel free to write that into the chat window. But coming back to the graphic, so the part we're going to focus on today is the blue box in the top right corner and how we tie the financials of the business, not only from the budget and the plan, but also the actuals link that back so that there is consistency and visible performance, visible reliability within the organization. Okay, so a little bit about how our methodology and our approach has been refined through a number of engagements with different organizations who are utilizing this approach to corporate performance management. And we're happy to provide you the opportunity to speak with some of these clients as well if you so desire. Okay, so one of the items we talked about there a little bit was the dashboarding and providing visibility across the business, not just of financial information, but also operational reports and KPIs. So let's just take a quick second. I'll pass now over to Dan just to very briefly introduce some of this functionality without a lot of detail, as it's not really our focus today.
Good afternoon and good morning and good evening to some of you. As Shane said, I am Dan Cox, so I appreciate it. Yes, we are going to take just a couple minutes to talk about visualizations and visualizing that data. So part of our platform is doing dashboarding, being able to see KPIs and being able to provide that information in a mobile context, as well as proactive type alerts and full GIS type mapping capabilities as well. So you can see where your clients are, your customers, and of course being able to see where your potential sales could be as well. And what we're actually looking at today is actually what are our technology for visualizations, and we're actually using what's called a storyboard approach right now. And this is actually completely on the web. So you can access it at any time. It's a board report, basically a PowerPoint on the web. But because it's a storyboard, we not only can go horizontally, which we've been doing, but just now I've gone vertically. And because it's all part of the single platform, I can have embedded charts and graphs and reports, and it's all live. So here I might decide that this chart is quite congested, and I want to take a deeper look inside of that particular area to see the information. So I can go ahead and drill on that and even expand the menu to decide that I might want to slice that information by different demographics. And maybe in this context I want to take a look at two of my main type areas, and I can go ahead and filter that live in the PowerPoint while I'm actually discussing this information. So it's really quite nice to be able to do that, especially when you're doing a report to one of your clients and they just want to have a little bit of additional information. So here I'm going to show you a couple more, and then we'll jump back over to MaxiPlan. So here I'm able to see that I can get GIS, but also additional information, again, based off of drill down within the context of the storyboard. So if I want to take a look at Latin America and start to drill down and keep on drilling, you can see that I can get quite a number of different pieces of information right away. And of course I can go ahead and jump backwards as well based off the breadcrumbs, or even restart my analysis and drill down into multiple different areas, as you can see. And because it is a storyboard, I don't necessarily need to go back vertically to get the associated information. And here I can see I've got another chart with the ability to slice that information by region, by the invoice amount, but then very nicely be able to select a singular area and be able to use that as a filter to drill down on different pop-up charts and reports. And in this case, I'm looking at the European area with some statistics about that particular area that I've filtered on. And likewise, I can add as many reports that I like. In this case, I'm going to drill down on a now more detailed report. As you can see, I can start to get more detailed information, just depending on the direction that I need to drill and get the analysis that I need. So it's quite interactive, very easy to use. and of course live, completely within the framework of our platform. So the last one is quite unique. We're actually looking, of course, at the height of the bar, but also the color of the column. The color denotes the profit margin versus the height of the bar, which is just telling us how much we've invoiced. So the bluer the bar, the actual better the area has been. So if I hover over that, I can see the campaign or the camp region, in this case of Europe, invoices 176 million, but my profit margin is 9 million, as opposed to, let's say, Australia, where I've got quite a significant invoice, but my profit margin is significantly less as a percentage as well. So it's quite nice to be able to see that type of information very clearly and easily to read. And in this case, I've also allowed myself to drill and be able to do analysis anywhere and take myself anywhere I'd like within the framework of this particular data set. So I can actually tell if I wanted to see what kind of bookings I've done, what the method, the status is, or even the step. If I said booking method, I can go ahead and drill down. If I want to go and say, okay, from the website, I want to see what type of campaigns we've done, so I can look at the campaign and continue to go ahead and drill and find those anomalies. And as you can see here, this particular campaign has been the best responsive, even though it's not been the greatest as far as profit margin. It has been the best as far as response. So maybe we should tweak that particular campaign and use that. So this comes back to those three questions at the beginning that Shane was leading to, which was how have we done, why have we done it, and of course what we should be doing. Because based off our analysis, we should be able to change our budget, change our forecast, reforecast, so that our KPIs change accordingly. Great. So that was just a little bit on how dashboarding and the ability to present within the solution provided. So I'll jump back and allow Shane to continue on MaxiPlan.
Thank you, Dan. So a little bit there about, I guess, the output of how you can visualize all of the information. But now let's focus on the earlier parts of the process and how, from a budgeting, reporting, forecasting perspective, the corporate performance management side of things works. So first of all, you'll notice that when we get to the technology, it is web-based. And people ask us why this technology, and the ease and simplicity of deployment is one of the key criteria. Because it is a template-based approach, we can get organisations up and running exceptionally quickly, and that ease of use isn't just to the back end, but does extend to, as you will see, to the user environment as well. This style of technology is used in lots of different businesses and lots of different geographic and industry groups around the world. Some of those logos are shown here. So while we're going through the presentation today, what we'd like to do is keep in mind what we call the 5 C's for performance management success. A lot of what we will be doing today will give or encourage a much higher level of collaboration around the budgetary process. Traditionally, it's been something that customers tell us it hasn't generated a lot of discussion, a lot of collaboration. It's merely just an approach of finance has asked us for a budget, so here's some figures. So with this approach, our customers say they get a lot more collaboration, a lot more discussion about what the budget really should be, what the numbers really should be. The consolidations, as you see, we'll see, are automatic, saving all of that manual work. Also, because of the way in which everything is consolidated, the workflows operate, there's a lot more control retained within the budget owner often within the finance department that will be. And because of, our customers say that they have some challenges as well around, for example, using spreadsheets, that people change maybe a row or add a column in, maybe someone changes the formula or types a number over the top of a formula. That lack of consistency can make the process very time consuming and very prone to error. Whereas with the MaxiPlan approach today, you'll see it be very consistent, very structured approach. All of those four aspects lead to the fifth C, which is confidence in the budget and confidence in driving a business through a set of KPIs and metrics to achieve that desired performance level. Also in terms of confidence in terms of being able to scenario or map or plan as well. All right, thank you, Dan.
Excellent.
So I'll pass over to Dan at this stage, who will give us a quick overview of the scenario that we've got and then into the software. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm going to take you through a fairly simplistic couple of models, but then show you what a normal model might look like. So in this particular model, I'm going to be doing a 12-month budget or forecast with operations in Europe, US, Asia Pac. So of course that means currency translations. We've got 3 different divisions in this particular conglomerate. So very different. We've got automotive, consumer goods, and restaurants. So within that, we'll be able to see that I've got several different models that will be able to build up into a profit and loss. And with that, I'll be able to do by country and by operation. And of course, the actuals will be consolidated as well, which is one of the first tasks that we do. So we'll bring in actuals and we'll be able to do eliminations, consolidations, and translations so that we can get a full suite of financial statements. But in this model, we'll just have a P&L for now. We'll be able to do revenue. You can see there in the blue boxes then our financing, CapEx, and HR, and our expenses with travel expense and overhead expenses, which is where most of our time will be focused. Also, even though we've got these models as far as different subject areas, we have, of course, many different areas that we of our global business that we've got to consolidate. So we've got North America's, Asia Pac, and of course Europe. And underneath that, we've got North America, Canada, and the US. Asia Pac, we've got Singapore, Australia, and of course under Europe, we've got France and the UK. These are all the different organizational roll-ups that we'll want to take a look at as we're entering data in so that it gets consolidated by subject area all the way up to the P&L. And finally, on the revenue side of things, we've got a completely different roll-up as far as the expenses. So on the revenue side, it's fairly straightforward. We've got Lucy, Jack, and Gordon, who all report into George for revenue figures. So some of the key challenges that we will be facing with the ABC Corp here is they've got different complicated revenue calculations because they're different business, different types of businesses. We've got currency translations and conversions, and of course the things that we want to do is encourage engagement, collaboration of the budget process, as well as being able to see that rolling forecast, do automatic consolidations, and see that structured yet flexible reporting. The familiar ease to use system, which we'll go through, and what we'll be talking about shortly is how MaxiPlan can be rapidly deployed and easily administered. So I'm going to jump over to MaxiPlan, and again, it is all web-based. So you can see here. Oh, that's all right.
Before we get started, we'll just take a quick second to just get some feedback to make sure that our presentation is as accurate as possible. If you could take a moment, everyone, to just complete the poll questionnaire about your primary method of budgeting and forecasting. Thank you, Dan.
No problem.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your feedback.
Excellent. So I'm going to log in as the actual budget owner. So Tom is the financial controller in this case, and he owns the budget and the budget model. So we'll be able to see a lot more than just a contributor to the budget will be. But we'll log in as multiple people in a moment. So I'll log in as Tom. And we'll be able to see a number of projects along the top. So you could be looking at doing modifications for the upcoming budget, or we've got separate types of budget for multiple companies, let's say you could do. But I'm going to focus first on the ABC Group demo, and I'm going to expand the modeling and just show you the model flow, which is going to be exactly what the PowerPoint just showed, with the different models, the subject areas, rolling into the profit and loss. So at the end here, you can see the P&L, and from the P&L, we have revenue, and from the P&L, we can see driving in expenses. Expenses is made up of both payroll, which is made up of individual employee details, as well as travel costs flowing into expenses. We also have loan details flowing into loan calculations into the P&L for interest expense and income, as well as assets calculating their depreciation, both payables and expenses, and amortization into the P&L as well. But before we actually take a look at some of the inputs, we can see some of the outputs as well. So MaxiPlan comes with a number of standard reports, and some of those, of course, are the ability to do comparative analysis between your actuals and budgets. And in this case, I've got two versions, actuals that I'm bringing in and budget, and I've got a variance. However, we can create as many versions as we like. So you could have a forecast 1, forecast 2, forecast 3, or budget cut 1, budget cut 2, and final budget. So you can actually keep track of each of those versions if you like, and be able to do variance and investigate differences between different budget cuts or budget runs. So you can take a look at whether or not, yes, somebody did actually do that 3% cutback on their office supplies, let's say. But you can see here, I've got drop-down menus, so I can easily go to a particular department, a region, if I want. So I can slice that, let's say, by Thailand, and see that information. We can see right away that we don't have anything input for US dollars for Thailand. If I go ahead and switch it again, maybe for Australia, we can see that Australia has actually brought in their actuals and completed their budget. As well as being able to see that, obviously we're looking at US dollars now, so we can easily change it to any number of currencies that we're tracking or utilizing, and we can easily go ahead and change it to, in this case, Australian dollars. So we can see there right away how easy it is to go between currencies and get that side-by-side view. Of course, we've got things like just generic standard P&L, and of course all of these can be customized, or you can create your own new reports as well, and there's a report wizard that comes with MaxiPlan. And again, I can go ahead and switch, in this case, between budget and actual, and between different currencies, or slice by a different region or grouping of areas. And we can add more slices, more information pieces as you need. And of course, very important, the rolling forecast. So this particular type of rolling forecast is utilizing actuals and is overlaying the budget when actuals come in and a month gets signed off. So we actually at the end are utilizing actuals plus, in this case, budget and forecast. So we can get that more accurate full year forecast. Okay, and again, we can go ahead and slice it as we need by different area, region, etc., and by currency if we need to. So now I'm just going to show you a little bit of how MaxiPlan keeps track of everyone and how they actually do budgets. So in this case, I'm going to open up a workflow, and I've actually deployed expenses in the expense model based off of region, but each region has a particular owner or owners, and you can see here very clearly and very easily who has or has not submitted their budget or completed their budget based off of the icon. So we can see that the US is completed and submitted, Canada's submitted, Singapore hasn't started, Thailand's actually been rejected, so they need to do a bit more work, Australia's submitted, the UK is submitted, and France is in progress. So we know that, that they're actually working on their budget. You can also see that North America, because both of the underlying regions are submitted, North America is now awaiting review because there is a review process at North America, and that person is Angus, and when they go ahead and review and submit, and if they approve it, then that'll go up to the world. Of course, the CFO, Group Financial Controller, will be in charge of final review of that. And if I hover over, let's say, Thailand, for instance, we can see right away who the reviewer is, and in this case, Tom is. So I've actually logged in as Tom, and he's the reviewer and the approver, and we can see that Suti is the owner and reviewer of our viewer of that particular node. So Suti needs to go back in to her expenses and go ahead and finish off her expenses. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and log in as Suti. So I'm going to just open up another tab so we can get both of them open at the same time. And we'll just wait one moment while I log in.
Yeah. Just while you're doing that, Dan, we'll just get, again, to make sure that it's appropriate, relevant as possible, if everyone could take a moment to complete the poll question there regarding the number of people contributing to the budget process. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, and for now, I think we will save those until the end of the and address those.
Great.
Okay, fantastic. Appreciate the feedback there from everyone. Okay, thank you, Dan.
Yep, no problem. So I've logged in as Suti, and as you can see, she has much less information that she can see. So she's restricted on what she can contribute to. So I'll click on the expenses workflow, and you'll see right away, yes, she has only got Thailand because she's only been allocated, and she's the manager for Thailand region for the expenses. So I can go ahead and click that open, and we'll see what she's able to do here. And I'll just expand that a little bit so we can see that. So right away you can see it is a very familiar spreadsheet type environment, which makes transitioning to an actual platform like this technology to help you make that change management a little bit easier, because everybody's used to spreadsheets, rows and columns, but with the power of MaxiPlan, the ability to enter data and actually have calculations go across and instantaneously consolidate once someone has actually saved that information is so powerful. In this case, I'm actually looking at actuals. So if I switch my version to budget, we'll be able to see right away what's available for entry. So anything that's yellow has the ability to be able to enter information in. So right away I can see that I've got utilities and other office expenses as well as other expenses that I've accidentally left blank. So I can come in and say maybe utilities for the different offices is around 2,000. In this case, we're entering in local currency, so 2,000 bahts per month. So instead of having to completely write 2,000 out, across every single month, I can use shortcut keys. And in this case, I can use pound, which allows me to spread it all the way across, and the K for thousands. Of course, I can use M for millions and B for billions, etc., and that will actually spread it across. But I can also say, well, halfway I know that I've got a rate increase for my utilities, and so I'm going to say that's 2,500 across. And so now I've evenly split that across. I can see here that the final full year figure is 28,000, but I think that might be a little bit short. I think we probably will be doing a bit of overtime, and so the lights and the manufacturing will be on a little bit longer. So I'm going to actually say 30K at the full year, and you can see it's actually broken that back, which is very nice and easy and handy for us to be able to do. Of course, there are many different shortcuts, including the ability to refer to another row and be able to do simple multiplication right inside of the cell and be able to enter that information in. So I can go ahead and save that. And at the top you can see I've got 3 different buttons: the ability to save, submit, and delegate. So of course everybody goes on annual leave once in a while, and so we'll need to be able to delegate our responsibility to a particular person, and so that's what delegate is there for. I've just hit the save button, which means I've actually allowed the system to save my information, and instantaneously if I wanted to go back and take a look at the P&L, those numbers for utility have already been consolidated all the way up to the P&L, so the group financial controller at the world level would have already seen that impact. So some of the other things we can do very quickly is if I wanted to take a look at my actuals to budget side by side, I can easily rearrange like a pivot table, the ability to see that information right away, and I can see what's really out of whack or something that I do need to adjust, and I could go ahead and do that. And I can take a look at maybe by the full year and see how that looks. And I know that we're on severe budget restraints, so the $2 million difference at the moment is not too bad. But I do also notice that my travel costs are 0, and I do know that we will have some travel costs. I'll come back to that one in a second, because travel costs are actually driven from another model that flows into our overhead expenses. So I'm going to just rearrange this back so that we can see everything properly. And I'll go ahead and submit this budget. And what happens when I submit the budget, it actually prompts me to send an email, if I want, to my supervisor, my manager, who's going to review my process, and I can say, yes, I have finished my budget cut 1, and say okay. So that'll actually automatically email my supervisor. Of course, in this particular case it's Tom, and he can come in and now actually take a look at what I've done, approve it or reject it again if it needs to. But you'll also notice that all the yellow has gone away as well. That means that Sudi actually cannot adjust this budget cut now. That way we've got consistency. There aren't multiple changes happening at the same time. She's actually submitted that. Of course, if she finds out that I need to change something, she can go ahead and ask her manager, in this case Tom, to go ahead and reject it so that she can go and edit it if she needs to. So you can see if I just refresh the Sudi's web page, we can see that she's actually submitted that. And of course, if I come back to Tom now, it'll actually show that it's waiting for my review. And I could go ahead and submit it and say, yes, I do approve it, and it's great. Let's go ahead. I can go ahead and edit, or I can go ahead and reject it again. I'm going to go ahead and open up Sudi's travel costs now, because entering data like that with a few different seasonality effects, the ability to spread, etc., is great. But most of the time we've got assumptions and drivers that we want the budget to actually process through. And so I'm going to show you the travel costs, which we've got a number of assumptions set up. So we've got assumptions for airfare, per diem, mileage, as well as overnight time. And in this case, we can see here that Sudi hasn't entered any travel time just yet. And so we can see that I can have a drop-down menu of the employees that she's got in her department. We can see that she's got Nadir and Suthi. So we can select one of those employees that are going to travel, and we can decide which travel month. Now this is just a template. We can create any number of ways that we can use drivers, and in this case she's going to fly from Thailand to Australia, and she's going to go for 10 days. And you can see there it's automatically calculated the airfare, the hotel per day, the per diem, and trip costs. The ability to do that eliminates the necessity for employees to go out and try and search websites for typical airfare costs, etc. That takes it all away and gives the control back to the financial controller or accountant, and the ability to change those assumptions as you need. So I'm also going to put in Suti here, and she's going to go in July, and in this case she's going to go to the US, and she's going to go for 35 days. It's a big project. Again, you can see that it's in Thai baht. So when I go ahead and hit submit, for Sudi's case, it'll continue to be Thai baht. But when I go in and review that by Tom, we can change it because he's Australian. We can see that it'll be in US dollars and automatically converted.
Excellent, Dan. We might take the opportunity there, just while there's a pause there, to just again, if everyone could take an opportunity to complete the poll question about forecasting frequency, just so that we can tailor the next section on that to your requirements. Thank you. Great, thank you very much everyone for that feedback. And Dan, back to you in terms of where you're up to. Thank you.
Great, excellent. All right, so I'll just jump back to Tom and see that we can see that the travel costs have been submitted and it's waiting for my submission as well. So I'll go ahead and submit that. And we can see now that it's rolled up and waiting in progress for the Asia Pac community to go ahead and sign off on that budget. So those are a couple of the different ways we can actually enter data and be able to consolidate that data, and the ability to track who has actually done what in what process. So we can deploy that in many different ways, in many different contexts. So it can be by a salesperson, for instance, or region, as it is in this case, or by division, or a combination of thereof as well. So that was a very simplistic model showing the ability to enter information in a normal manner, as well as a driver-based way that will flow up to our profit and loss. So as we become more and more fluent with MaxiPlan and the ability to customize, we can see that revenue at the moment doesn't have many drivers being brought in directly into revenue. So I'm going to take a look at the extended demonstration and show you how we can add on to the ability to customize any particular area that we need to. And in this case, we can see that the bottom half is exactly identical to the model that we just had been looking at. So the end result is still the P&L, we've got the expenses there, etc. But in this case, revenue now has been customized to have direct restaurant revenue calculations, driving revenue, consumer goods, which are now driven by device costs and device prices, and automotive revenue driven by detailed vehicle sales and auto revenue. We also have the ability again to have some assumptions. Here's our travel assumptions as well as vehicle prices. So if we've got our cost of goods, our sales prices, our price books, we can create those assumptions and have those separate so that we can control those as we need. So in this case, I might take a look at how we can actually leverage the ability to customize revenue. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the revenue model, and as we can see there, it's actually fairly simplistic, where it's revenue less COGS equals our gross margin. I'm just going to switch it by division and expand that so we can see the different areas: automotive, consumer goods, and restaurant revenue. So I'm going to open up the vehicle sales that is driving our revenue information for our automotive P&L line item. So if I look at my revenue, I can see here I've got my vehicle sales. And again, it's completely driver based in this case. So I'm selecting the different areas that I find that will be necessary for my forecast. So the type of vehicle that I'm going to sell, the type of sale, whether it's commercial or private. And you can see here I can start to add as many transactions as I need. So I've got consumer good, consumer type, a corporate type, or a fleet rental. So I might say it's a fleet rental, and the fleet's going to purchase 6 new cars, and they're pretty high-end cars. I'm going to sell them an SL270, and that's going to happen in September. So as you can see, automatically it's driving the revenue, the price, and the ultimate net revenue. That information, of course, then as soon as I save it, will be transferred all the way up through the P&L. Of course, that ability to see that in a dashboard type instantaneously is extremely important. So you can keep track of not only who's been doing what, but also what's actually making impacts within the budget and reforecasting system. So here we've got an example of the ability to see top level of gross profit, the expenses, the different divisions: automotive, consumer goods, the restaurant revenue, a quick P&L by region. And as we scroll down, we can get some different information as far as spark lines, the total full year of information, actual to budget, as well as then the ability to have a bit more detailed analysis, being able to slice the information by selecting one or more of the different car models or different regions. So if I only want to look at Canada, or just looking at Australia, we can take a look at that impact. And maybe I just want to take a look at consumer area versus corporate versus fleet. And again, I'm looking right now at US dollar, but easily if I wanted to transfer and see the translation into euros or British pounds in this case, we've got the ability to do that. Excellent. So from here, there were a couple of questions that I wanted to go ahead and answer as we were going through this. So Shane, would you go ahead and fully describe a couple of those questions?
Okay, thank you. So the first query related to the generation of balance sheets and a statement of cash flow. Dan, you did show a little bit there on balance sheets. Did you want to just talk through a second about cash flow as well, cash flow generation?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect question, and I was hoping somebody would actually ask me that question. So the models that we've shown have been fairly simplistic. But normally, when we take a look at doing what we call our rapid start deployment, that gives us a whole range of the basics for any company. And I'm just opening up one of those examples. And you can see here at the very end, we've got our cash flow. So we've got our cash flow, our balance sheet, as you can see, which is being derived from our movements, as well as our trial balance, our opening balance as well. So we can bring in our actual opening balance and our movements that will be able to derive through our trial balance into our balance sheet and through our cash flow. That ability to then denote what is cash flow affecting. So each account that we import into the MaxiPlan platform allows us to state whether or not that account will have either a balance sheet and or a cash flow effect. So that will allow us then to automatically generate the cash flow for purposes of being able to see not only the actuals being consolidated, but also the budget. And again, with this particular rapid start demonstration, we can see that we've got payroll. In this case, we're doing it down by employee detail, but we can change that based off of position or region. We've got different areas for revenue automatically for projects and service revenue, which can easily be customized. We've got accounts payable and accounts receivable. We also have the ability to do journal entries, so direct journal adjustments that you may not necessarily want to keep inside of your general ledger. For instance, some of your eliminations, if you've got multiple companies that you need to consolidate, it's not necessary that you run those eliminations inside of your general ledger, because we can actually do them here and keep track of those and run those every single month, so that your reporting can come directly out of MaxiPlan, which has your budget and your actuals properly consolidated. The last item there, which I was talking about, was your chart of accounts table, and we've got a model for that. Again, to be able to denote what the description might be if you want to change your description or have a master chart of accounts that you want to map to. If you've got multiple charts of accounts in multiple different companies, as well as, again, the ability to state whether or not what area of a balance sheet or P&L it goes to, as well as the cash flow and whether or not it has a cash flow impact. All right, that was a very long explanation to that, but hopefully that answered that particular question. Shane.
Thank you, Dan. If you do have a question or you want to ask a follow-up, please feel free to do so. Next question is in relation to the uploading of actuals into the system. How that has happened, because people want to avoid rekeying. I'm not sure, just in the context that the question is, can we show that? Rather than show, we might talk about what the process is. I think might be more appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a very good question, because there are multiple different ways. One thing I didn't actually say is within one of the models, or any of the models, for instance, let's take a look at payroll, for instance. We can see here we've got monthly salaries, and I can actually slice that by employee, so we can see all the employees. And we can take a look at whether or not it's gross salary or monthly salary. And actually, I haven't created my employees in here, but we've got all the employees. So you could actually just cut and copy directly in here. So you can use Control-C and Control-V, and that's probably the simplest, easiest way to do that. but we also have the ability to directly import. Now, that ability allows us to bring in information without having to rekey it as well or have it in a spreadsheet form. So here we can see we can import it directly into MaxiPlan, and that's from could be from a flat file or a CSV file. We can also export the data, so you can export it in an automated fashion, but also directly from a cube as well. If we wanted to, we can actually export directly with clicking on one of the keys here. You can see here I can go ahead and export out a CSV file to Excel if we wanted to. Now, most of the time what we do is when we create that single source of truth, when we talk about that that solution map that Shane spoke to earlier, is that we have the ability then to automate the import of your actuals directly from, we can do it directly from an ERP or general ledger, but typically we'll do it from the data warehouse or that single source of truth, being able to pull that information normally on an overnight basis, or if you need it more often, it can be as frequent as you like. So it could be half daily or every 15 minutes or every 5 minutes if you want to do a high velocity of sales that you want to bring in, etc., and see that information. So there are multiple ways of getting data in. Simplest one is cut and copy. Second simplest one is to pull in information directly by utilizing the import functions. And then, of course, the more fundamental way of being able to set up and pull that information on a regular basis, automatic, through a process overnight. Great.
Thank you very much, Dan. Hopefully that answers that question. Next question we have is about integration with existing general ledger or accounting systems in terms of which systems we can integrate with to bring the actuals across from. So I might deal with this one. So I think the question specifically in this case related to MYOB, or the person asking is an MYOB user. So the answer is yes, we can work with that. In fact, we have clients on a variety of different systems. So the actual system that you utilize is unlikely to be a concern. However, we can have a conversation about that. We've worked with a lot of different systems. Yeah. And the second part to that question was, how long does it take to establish or implement this style of technology? That's a difficult one to answer directly, obviously, without having a look at each individual person's requirements. So what I might do instead is just talk briefly about the process that we would go through to be able to answer that question for you. First of all, a lot of clients will put aside maybe a couple of hours for us to review the current spreadsheet-based processes, to have a look at the chart of accounts, to have a look at the organizational structure and all of those bits and pieces of information that are relevant to coming up with an estimate. From the end of, at the end of that session, we generally are able to provide an estimate as to a budgetary estimate as to what effort will be involved in terms of time and dollars. Some clients then are looking for a fixed price, at which point we would normally sit down for 1 to 2 days, do a in-detailed scoping. At the end of that, we would generate a statement of work with the required work and have a fixed price on that. So that's generally a paid-for exercise. And so there are a couple of different ways to get an idea. Just coming back to something we said at the beginning, which is, generally speaking, this technology, because it does use a wizard, we are able to get up and running much, much faster than some systems that are possibly previous generation. And so from that perspective, often that's done in a week measured in weeks rather than months. Not a week. Sorry about that. Follow-up question just about what you were talking about there, Dan, in terms of about the importing of information. The question is, if the accounting system in use can export to Excel, then that can be imported into MaxiPlan. The answer to that is yes, absolutely. If, for example, there is a reason why we either cannot or the client prefers not to link directly to their system, then yes, you can export to Excel and bring that straight into MaxiPlan. Okay. From that perspective, there are no more questions at this stage, so we'll just pause for a second. If anyone would like to have any other questions they'd like to ask, now is the time. We are right on the 1 hour time limit, so we will get ready to finish up shortly. If you do have a question, please feel free to type it into the box. In the meantime, I wanted to just take the opportunity to sincerely thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Hopefully it has been valuable. Over the next few days, you can expect some contact from someone or one of the people at Data Transform just to understand your thoughts, get your feedback on what you saw today, and answer any questions that you may have about the process from here. Okay, it doesn't appear as though there are any other questions at this stage, so thank you very much for your attendance. We appreciate the time and we look forward to speaking to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.